Hey, welcome back to another episode of Prairie Views. Today, my guest is Tristan Harper. And Tristan, why don't you just introduce yourself real quick and let everybody know what you do at Prairie Engineers?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gabe. I am Prairie's mapping discipline lead. I also manage a lot of our hydrographic surveying projects, and I'm legal counsel for Prairie Engineers in-house.
Awesome. So, for those of you that don't know, Prairie Views is a biweekly, about 15-minute interview space where we interview one of our employees. So, Tristan, so what's something that this is kind of like this only happens in my line of work kind of moment for you?
I've really enjoyed being a part of our hydrographic surveying team. That said, it's not without its own challenges. Anytime you're dealing with boats and trailers, new waterways, that kind of thing, you're always bound to have problems. And hydrographic surveying, even though we're professionals on boats, it's no exception to that. So, we've knocked off a transducer, we've broken sonar mounts, had to have our in-house mechanic go out and meet the hydrographic surveyors in a hotel parking lot with a welder. Um, we've had a trailer break, and one of our hydrographic surveyors has been on the side of the road. So we have lots of kind of physical challenges associated with hydrographic surveying that you might not get in other lines of engineering or surveying. But there's also some really positive sides to hydrographic surveying. We were doing a job over towards Pittsburgh, measuring the current on a river for the Army Corps of Engineers, and it was flood stage. So all the boat ramps were shut down, they were closed. We tried to launch from flooded roadways, we couldn't. So we ended up calling a couple marinas, and one marina owner left his kids' soccer game to come meet us at a marina so that he could open it up for us and help us get our boat in the water. So we meet some really, really neat and interesting people on the hydrographic surveying side who are, thrilled that we're out there on the rivers trying to improve our waterways.
Yeah, well, and that brings up another kind of follow-up. It's like, you guys get out on flooded waters when very few people are actually out there, and there's risks involved to that. Talk a little bit about mitigating some of those risks when you're having to be on the water when really no one else is out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned flooded waterways, but it's not just flooded waterways. Our teams often have to go out when boat ramps are icy, or when there's chunks of ice floating down, or when there's logs in the water. So we we pride ourselves in having some very, very experienced hydrographic surveyors. Jarrett Langer is a great example of that. He's a PLS licensed in Arkansas, but he's also one of our lead hydrographic surveyors, and he's got decades of experience in hydrographic surveying. Abed Nakim, hydrographer, tons of experience, and even a lot of the new folks we've added on over the past year or two, great experience. So it's so important that we prioritize safety on the boat, that we recognize we can't do our job in an unsafe environment. If somebody gets hurt, that's going to stop the job. That's the last thing we want. So we always encourage our surveyors to be very aware of their surroundings, be aware of what's going on, be aware of conditions, and just take those appropriate safety measures. Always wear a personal flotation device, a life jacket when they're outside the cabin, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So like if you weren't doing what you're doing, if you weren't doing project management for hydrographic surveying and the geospatial mapping and the things that we do, what other career do you think you would have chosen and why?
Gabe, I can tell you what I would not be doing, and that is litigation. I started my career as a litigator with a civil litigation firm, doing a lot of construction defect and land use law. So um, that's something I would not be doing because I don't feel there was much constructive coming out of that. What's important to me and what I love about the stuff we do here at Prairie is, we produce something. We help people, we help companies, we help determine the truth about rivers or about the water bodies, that kind of thing. So I like having that constructive outcome. And if I wasn't here at Prairie, I don't know if I had to do it all over again, maybe building construction management, something along those lines to help in the construction world.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like you learned in your career, like, I want to do something where I'm actually I got my hands on something, I'm producing something that's immediately relevant, to help other people either build something or, in your case, navigate waterways that, we've got, and I haven't looked up the stats, but tons and tons of valuable resources on our waterways every day, um, that our economy relies on. And so, being able to produce the data that makes those shipments, safely go from one place to another, super critical, super important. And I can see why you chose it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a thrill when we get a call from the Army Corps of Engineers last minute saying, "Hey, we've got a barge that's grounded. We need somebody to go out and figure out what the heck's going on with the river at that point." And we can get that turned around in 12, 24 hours or something and really make a difference. Those projects are fun. It's neat to
Yeah,
see
for
happen.
sure. So, what's something you wish your friends or family understood about what you do that they just don't have any idea about?
The number of times I get asked, "So do you get to do much fishing off those hydrographic survey boats?" It's amazing. I think what a lot of folks don't realize is the amount of effort and knowledge, training that has to go into hydrographic surveying. I'm no expert. I work with some incredible folks who are. We've got really, really talented staff here at Prairie Engineers, not just in hydrographic surveying, but everywhere throughout the company. But there's a lot of misconceptions about what hydrographic surveying entails, what we do out there on the boats. We're not improving our TANs, we're not catching fish. Instead, we're behind computer screens, we're driving boats, trying not to hit submerged logs, dodging barges, all while trying to produce data that the client's going to be happy with, that looks good, that kind of thing. So when I explain hydrographic surveying, sometimes I have to go into a little more detail with family and friends than I'd like.
It's really interesting because a lot of times, I ask other people in the company, like, "Oh, if you could switch roles, right, with somebody," and everybody keeps saying hydrographic surveying because I think of the misconceptions that it's like, "Oh, I can, work on my tan, I can throw a pole out in the water and catch some fish," but you guys are so busy trying to capture that data in a safe and efficient way, like, there's just no time for any of that other recreation, right?
Exactly, and then there's all the processing back in the office that goes along with it. A lot of our hydrographic surveyors spend a lot of time behind their computer monitors working on that data to ensure that we're putting out a really good quality product.
Yeah. So what's a project that you, are really proud of? Something that stands out in your mind that you're just really proud of the team and what they've accomplished?
We've done a couple that I've really enjoyed and that I thought we did a great job with. One was a mine, an abandoned mine. The end stakeholder was EPA. We had a prime contractor who hired us to go out there with multi-beam sonar, scan that mine, see if there were any abandoned mine shafts that we could find, or figure out the total volume kind of remaining in that mine. They've been filling it with sediment and construction debris, that kind of stuff. They want to know how much room was left. So access was really difficult. There was no ramp. We had to use four-wheel drive truck. We're backing a little John boat down over logs. There was a chainsaw involved, but we produced a really nice quality product there. We were able to determine that in some places there was an overhang, or rather an underhang, that could have been perhaps a mine shaft. We were able to calculate volume and show all that in 3D because we used a multi-beam sonar. So I thought that was really neat. One of the other projects I'm particularly proud of is we're working on the Upper Mississippi River Restoration Project. And we've done some neat stuff with that. Tried out some experimental sonar, something called a parametric sweep sonar. So it uses a high frequency beam and a lower frequency beam that mix in the water to produce a very tight low frequency beam. And getting to play with new technology like that, see how that works, especially on cutting edge projects that are so important to our nation's infrastructure, it's really neat to be involved with.
No kidding. Yeah, that sounds really cool. So, like, let's pretend I could put you in a time travel anywhere, into the past. What's a famous, like, surveying or engineering project that you would have loved to have been a part of?
There's a bunch. I think we did, as a country, did so many cool projects during the Great Depression. uh, dams that really affected our nation's infrastructure. But probably my top would be the public land survey system, back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, when we first, in a sense, kind of introduced surveying to our country. And that survey, even though it's been a couple hundred years at this point, still forms the basis of a lot of our modern surveying and land tracks, that kind of thing. So being able to get out there in our relatively untouched country at that point in time, see the land and be involved with something as groundbreaking as that, I think that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure, and probably quite dangerous, it
Yes,
would more dangerous than it is today, that's for sure. Um,
absolutely.
so speaking of switching roles with people at Prairie, is there anybody that you would love to switch roles with for a day, and why would you switch roles with them?
Again, I'm a little biased in this. Uh, I don't think I'd ever would have made a good engineer, and I don't envy a lot of the responsibilities that Darren and Lisa have and day-to-day stuff. So I think I'd probably pick one of our dedicated boat captains. We've got a couple boat captains that we use when we get very, very busy, and they're fantastic. They're really well trained, Coast Guard licensed, and they know what they're doing. But they also have that responsibility of running the survey lines, making sure the data uh, comes out well, making sure the surveyor is able to get what he or she needs from the boat. So I've always loved being on the water. I appreciate the challenges that those captains face with, with the vessels, with navigating safely, all that kind of thing. So I'd probably captain a boat for a day.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Um, what's something in our industry that's maybe an innovation that you wish you could implement immediately? Maybe it's in its infancy, or maybe it hasn't even, come to fruition yet, but something that would be innovative that you'd love to tackle.
We've talked a lot about hydrographic surveying, and one of the problems we face in hydrographic surveying is shallow water. So, we've got, I don't know, five, six, seven different multi-beam sonar sensors at this point, and they all do really, really well in a little bit deeper water where that beam has enough depth that it can spread out and get a good collection angle, get a large swath, if you will. And then we also use single beam sonar that shoots directly below the boat and provides a depth directly under the boat. Where hydrographic surveying often struggles is in that shallow water, say, 4 feet of depth or something, because it's a little too shallow to send in a boat with a multi-beam sonar. You may want better resolution and more coverage than a single beam sonar can produce. And so today's technology is starting to come around to what we call bathymetric LiDAR. So you've probably seen those programs about how planes can fly over the Amazon and detect, old buildings and civilizations, that kind of thing. The technology is the same with bathymetric LiDAR, except it uses a different type and color of laser, so it penetrates the water a little bit better. And that's really, really neat technology because it allows a lot of collection quickly. So, what I'd love to see in our industry is a really strong bathymetric LiDAR that can be mounted on a drone, a UAV, so that we could fly that in any instance where we've got shallow water but need to collect really high resolution data about that water. There are some bathymetric LiDARs that can be mounted on drones, but they're just not quite powerful enough yet for all use cases.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Um, if somebody's going to listen to this, maybe they're paying attention now, or they'll go back and listen to this interview later, and they're thinking about a career change. They're thinking about, or even a job change, not necessarily career, but a job change. Why do you think someone should consider Prairie Engineers for their next step in their career?
I've been lucky enough to be involved in some of our hiring process recently, and what I often tell these potential employees, these candidates, is that one of the things I love about Prairie is that we really hire for the person and not for the job description. Yeah, we often have job descriptions we need to fill, and we do that. But if we find a really talented individual, even if we don't have a perfectly defined space for that individual, we're still going to hire them because Prairie really appreciates talent. So, if you're out there in the engineering or architecture or survey field and and you're looking for a more flexible option, a company that really respects your expertise and gives you that quality of life, I'd encourage you to take a look at Prairie because my experience here has been wonderful. Everybody, you know, getting to interact with all of our folks on a daily basis. I think most people feel the same way.
Wow. Yeah, I would agree. And I like the angle there in that we don't try to fit somebody into something that maybe only utilizes 70 or 80% of their capability. We'd rather get somebody and figure out how to get their 100% capability into whatever we can use it, and we'll shape the service offerings around that talent is kind of what I'm
Yeah,
hearing you say. Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we're just a tad bit over time, so I want to respect people's time. I do want to ask you one at least quick fire question because this is just selfish on my part because I'm a big NFL fan. Chiefs or Eagles? Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Oh, I'm going to have to say Chiefs just because we've got a Kansas City office. Scott's a big Kansas City fan. I'm going with Chiefs.
You don't want to disappoint Scott at this point.
Exactly. Got to stay on his good side.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for visiting with me today. That was a great interview, Tristan. I really appreciate it. And we'll have another one for you here in a couple of weeks. This is Prairie Views, where all the engineers are strong, all the surveyors are good looking, and